In 1959, Chrysler introduced the Slant Six, an engine engineered never to die. But what if its very immortality was its death sentence? This cast-iron titan, with its signature slant, could run with a hole in a piston or on fumes of oil, becoming a symbol of absolute reliability from America to Argentina. Yet, its unkillable nature created an economic paradox for the company that built it. We'll explore why this engineering masterpiece was cast aside in its homeland, only to find eternal life across the ocean. And we'll ask, can anything be too perfect for a world that craves constant renewal? The late 1950s, an era when America dreamed of jet-age cars, but under the hoods of many, the hearts of yesterday were still beating. At Chrysler Corporation, a crisis was brewing, hidden behind the gleam of chrome and futuristic fins. Their model lineup needed a breath of fresh air, and most importantly, a new heart. The old, archaic flathead six-cylinder engine could no longer meet the challenges of the future. It was anemic, thirsty, and inefficient. But Chrysler's engineers weren't looking for the easy way out. In 1959, they unveiled something that changed the game. Not just a new motor, but a true manifesto of engineering, the Slant Six. Look at it. It doesn't stand upright like the others. It leans proudly at a 30-degree angle to the right, as if poised to launch. This wasn't a design whim. It was a stroke of genius that became the engine's signature, earning it the nickname, the Leaning Tower of Power. America's Pisan Tower, only instead of falling, it was unbreakable. This unusual angle gave the engineers two key advantages. First, it significantly lowered the hood line, giving designers more freedom. Second, and far more important for the engine's inner workings, it paved the way for a perfect intake manifold design. Behind this bold move was a team led by men like William Weertman. They didn't just want to build an engine, they dreamed of a motor that would never die. The lessons of the past, the pain and frustration from previous designs, were all taken into account. The goals were ambitious: fuel economy that could challenge compact European cars, compactness to fit any chassis, and ease of maintenance for any mechanic. And so, it was revealed to the world in two primary displacements: a nimble 170 cubic inches, 2.8 liters, and a more powerful 225, 3.7 liters. A 198 would follow later, but its true power lay not in numbers, but in its architecture. The carefully designed, nearly equal-length intake runners, made possible by the slant, ensured an even distribution of the air-fuel mixture to all cylinders. This meant optimal torque at low and mid-range RPMs, exactly what was needed for daily driving, not the racetrack. At the heart of this engineering marvel was a cast-iron block and cylinder head, forged with an overabundance of strength. 5 main bearings for the larger versions and 4 for the smaller one guaranteed unprecedented crankshaft rigidity, capable of withstanding any load. This wasn't just an engine, it was a fortress built to last for ages. Interestingly, in the early 1960s, there was an attempt to create a lightweight version with a 170 cubic inch aluminum block. It was a daring experiment that, unfortunately, proved troublesome and prone to overheating, and soon, cast iron reclaimed its rightful place. Perhaps it was then that Chrysler's engineers realized that some things don't need to be lightened when it comes to uncompromising reliability. Thus, a legend was born. An engine conceived as a survivor, a workhorse capable of enduring anything the road threw at it. It was simple to maintain, possessed phenomenal resilience, and was ahead of its time. Back in 1959, no one yet knew that this Slant Six would become a symbol of indestructibility, but the seeds of that fame were sown right there, on the drawing boards of Chrysler, long before urban legends of its unkillable nature were told around the world. No sooner had it been born than the engine rapidly claimed its place under the hood. Chrysler wasted no time. The leaning tower of power instantly became the workhorse heart for countless models. From the compact Valiants it endowed with surprising pep, to the agile Dodge Darts, and even in heavy-duty work machines like the D-Series pickups and tradesman vans, it toiled tirelessly. It was a true universal soldier, the cornerstone of the entire Chrysler, Dodge, and Plymouth lineup, embodying reliability and unpretentiousness. Its nickname, born from its unique slant, became more than just a joke. It was a symbol. This motor wasn't a race engine, but it possessed that solid, smooth torque at low and mid-range RPMs that made every journey predictable and comfortable. It was the embodiment of the set-it-and-forget-it philosophy, capable of covering vast distances with nothing more than basic maintenance. It was during these years that the Slant Six began to earn its indestructible reputation, becoming the standard for longevity. But even the most reliable machines have their unusual chapters, and our story is no exception. At the very beginning, alongside the triumphal march of the cast-iron engine, a daring but ultimately failed experiment took place. Chrysler's engineers, striving for further weight reduction and improved economy, decided to create a version of the Slant Six with an aluminum block. This was the 170 cubic inch variant, intended for the lightest Valiants. The idea seemed brilliant. Less weight equals less fuel consumption. However, reality proved to be far more mundane and harsh. The metallurgy of the early 1960s was not yet ready for the challenges this engine posed. The aluminum block, subject to far greater thermal expansion than its cast-iron counterpart, was extremely prone to overheating. A little overloading, or a lapse in checking the coolant level, and the thin aluminum walls would begin to warp. This led to blown gaskets, cracks, and premature failure. Within just a few years, the aluminum Slant Six was discontinued, quietly yielding to its heavier, but incomparably more durable cast-iron sibling. But was it merely an engineering failure? Or was there something more to it? Among Mopar enthusiasts, a theory known as the aluminum conspiracy still persists. It is said that Chrysler phased out the lightweight engine too quickly. Perhaps the issue wasn't just its tendency to overheat. The aluminum block was significantly more expensive to produce. But imagine if the engineers had perfected it, solving the cooling problems. We would have been left with a lightweight, yet still uncompromisingly reliable engine that could have served, quite literally, forever. And here's where the intrigue begins. What if such excessive reliability and longevity, especially in a lightweight package, was actually a problem for the manufacturer? An engine that doesn't break for years, doesn't require expensive repairs, and doesn't compel the owner to buy a new car. This could have crippled sales of spare parts and new vehicles. Perhaps the cast-iron Slant Six, for all its indestructibility, was still expensive enough to run due to its weight and fuel consumption that it didn't raise such fears. An aluminum, unkillable Slant Six, however, could have become a corporate headache, being too far ahead of its time. In any case, the aluminum experiment quickly faded away. It left behind only rare artifacts in collectors' garages and fertile ground for conspiracy theories. But this temporary setback only highlighted one thing. The true greatness of the Slant Six lay in its unbreakable, heavy, cast-iron armor that was destined to stand the test of time, and, as we shall see, it did so with flying colors. So, the aluminum experiment faded away, only underscoring the true greatness of the cast-iron Slant Six. It was this unbreakable armor that would become the foundation upon which not just a reputation, but a true legend would be built. And it didn't take long. In garages, at roadside service stations, and along the endless American highways, the Slant Six began to create a history that bordered on myth. Mechanics, owners, long-haul truckers, they all witnessed how this engine didn't just run, it refused to die. These weren't just stories of breakdowns, they were tales of survival against all odds. Imagine, a car comes into the shop, and a sound like a sledgehammer banging on an anvil echoes from under the hood. It turns out, a piston has a hole in it. The engine is smoking, shaking, but it's running. Or another story, a crack in the block, coolant leaking out, but the Slant Six still hauls the car home, and then some. The most astonishing, almost apocryphal tale: an engine arrives for service, and in the oil pan, there are only a few drops of oil, blackened from years of neglect, but it was running, never giving up. It just didn't want to die, became the motto for its thousands of fans. And where did these urban legends come from? Of course, no one literally believed the Slant Six could run on water alone. But this rumor, passed by word of mouth, was nothing more than a vivid metaphor for its incredible resilience, its ability to operate in the most hellish conditions when any other engine would have long since ceased. It wasn't about water, it was about spirit, character, and unprecedented fortitude. But behind these tales was not magic, but pure engineering. It was engineering that transformed a simple iron alloy into virtually indestructible armor. The key advantages? A robust cast iron block and head, yes, but that wasn't all. The crankshaft, the heart of any engine, was supported by 5 massive main bearings in the larger 225 and 198 versions, providing colossal rigidity and the ability to withstand incredible loads. And the cooling system? It was no accident. Meticulously designed water jackets enveloped the cylinders along their entire length, ensuring even heat dissipation and eliminating the thermal stresses that killed its aluminum sibling. And of course, this resilience was backed by phenomenal simplicity. The Slant Six hailed from an era when an owner could, with a basic set of tools, keep it running himself. No complex electronics, no tricky sensors. A timely change of oil and spark plugs, and the engine would reward you with hundreds of thousands of miles. Record-breaking runs of 500,000 miles without a major rebuild became commonplace, and some examples even reached 1 million, becoming true monuments to engineering. The quintessence of its hidden potential was the legendary factory Hyperpack, offered in the earliest years. This wasn't just a tune-up, it was a demonstration of what the engine was capable of, thanks to its immense inherent strength. With a 4-barrel carburetor and a special intake manifold, the humble 170 cubic inch Slant Six was transformed, unleashing the power that was engineered into its unkillable design from the start. This was a Slant Six that could be not only a tireless workhorse, but also, if desired, a rather spirited performer. This phenomenal durability knew no borders, extending far beyond the United States. In Argentina, where production of the Slant Six continued until the 2000s, it became a true automotive icon. There, under the scorching sun and on rough roads, its indestructible reputation was only amplified. Our cars would fall apart, but the engine was always alive, said Argentine drivers of the Dodge Polara and Valiant. That sentence is the ultimate testament to its status, a symbol of endurance in a world that is constantly changing. The Slant Six was not created as just an engine. Chrysler's engineers aimed to create a heart that would never stop, and by all accounts, they succeeded with flying colors. We've already talked about its unkillable nature, the legends and facts that made it an icon. But what if that very invincibility became its greatest enemy? What if the perfect engineering solution turned out to be a problem? In an automotive world where sales cycles dictate the rules, an engine that refuses to break is not always a blessing. For manufacturers like Chrysler, the phenomenon of the Slant Six, conceived by engineer William Weirtman as an engine that would never die, turned into a true economic paradox. If this tireless workhorse lasts for decades, who will buy a new car? Who will buy spare parts? Its triumph of reliability was a potential financial disaster, slowly undermining a business model geared toward constant replacement. And so, at the peak of its fame, this cast-iron titan began to lose ground in its Native American market. From its debut in 1959, it had faithfully served millions, becoming the heart of countless models, from the compact Valiant and Dart to the mighty Dodge D-Series pickups and tradesman vans. This slanted engine, dubbed the Leaning Tower of Power for its distinctive angle and impressive strength, was a symbol of working-class America. But by the early 1980s, the winds of change were blowing through the auto industry. When the last Slant Sixes rolled off the U.S. assembly lines in 1983, it wasn't a sudden decline or a sign of failure. It was the result of a slow but relentless paradigm shift. New criteria were coming to the forefront: compactness, fuel efficiency, and above all, standardization. The industry was moving toward lighter, higher revving V6 and inline-4 engines that offered better fuel economy and met new, increasingly strict emission standards. For an engineering masterpiece like the Slant Six, whose durability was based on solid iron, relatively low RPMs, and generous tolerances, this new reality was a death sentence. Its unique design, focused on longevity, now seemed excessive. It was forgotten for the sake of standardization. That was the unspoken theory. The auto industry was striving for unified platforms and engines that could be easily scaled and adapted for various models, meeting new emissions requirements without wasting resources on an inconveniently excessive level of reliability. Yes, it tried to adapt. Throughout its production run, the Slant Six received small but important updates. Electronic ignition, introduced in the 1970s, was an attempt to modernize it, to breathe new life into a proven design and improve its emissions performance. But these were merely cosmetic touches on a canvas that was already awaiting a complete reimagining. Its basic, unkillable essence remained unchanged. And it was this, ironically, that ultimately sealed its fate in America. The paradox of reliability was on full display. Sometimes, being too good means being no longer needed. While America was bidding farewell to this cast-iron titan, deeming it an obsolete paradox of reliability, fate had a very different future in store for the Slant Six. Its journey was far from over. It wasn't dying, it was migrating. Across the ocean, to another continent, where its legendary durability proved to be not a problem, but a salvation. We traveled to South America, to Argentina, where the story of the Slant Six got a second, incredibly long and vibrant life. For the American auto industry, this engine had become too good, too inconvenient in its indestructibility. But for the roads of Argentina, for the local drivers, the Slant Six became something more than just a motor. It became a symbol. Here, at the Chrysler Fevre plants, and later, after a merger, under the Volkswagen umbrella, production of the tireless 225 Slant Six continued. And it didn't just continue, it thrived. Years passed, decades came and went, and the Argentine Dodge Polaris and Valiants, powered by this heart, continued to conquer the miles. This engine, with its time-tested design and a near-total absence of electronics, proved to be the perfect solution for conditions where reliability was valued far more than fleeting fashion trends. Local mechanics and owners still tell stories that might seem like fiction in the U.S. about how this engine kept running even when, it seemed, all the laws of physics had been violated. Rumors circulated that the Slant Six could keep going with minimal oil or almost no coolant, as if it refused to give up. Of course, these are exaggerations, but they vividly illustrate its phenomenal resilience. Its ease of maintenance, the ability to be repaired on the roadside with limited access to complex parts, became a decisive factor. This was an engine that didn't demand delicate treatment, but responded to even minimal care with a willingness to serve until its last breath. In Argentina, the Slant Six became a cult phenomenon. It didn't just transport people. It helped them work, earn a living, and live their lives. It became an integral part of the national automotive history, a symbol of endurance and unpretentiousness. Local drivers, accustomed to harsh operating conditions and roads that could cripple any other powertrain, knew, if you have a Slant Six, you'll get there. They confirm this with the same unwavering statement. Our cars would fall apart, but the engine was always alive. This heartfelt cry from owners is the most vivid proof that Mopar's engineers had truly created something unprecedented. Production continued until the incredible year 2000. Imagine, an engine designed in the late 1950s not only outlived its American counterparts, but also an entire era, surviving into the new millennium. This wasn't just a production line. It was a testament to a flawless engineering balance, strong cast iron, a reliable crankshaft, effective cooling, and a moderate state of tune. All these elements combined to create a motor that, it seemed, could run forever. Thus, if in America, the Slant Six became a victim of its own perfection, in Argentina, it achieved true immortality, becoming a legend that lives on not only in history, but in thousands of working vehicles still traversing the vast landscapes of that distant land. It didn't just survive, it flourished, proving that true reliability is immune to fashion trends and economic calculations. So, what was the secret this engine held? What transformed an ordinary inline six into an immortal legend that outlasted decades and continents? Its story began in 1959, when engineers at Chrysler Corporation undertook an ambitious task to create a replacement for an outdated engine, but to make it perfect. William Weirtman, one of the key minds behind the project, later recalled their goal: to build a motor that would never die. And they succeeded. They gave it not only its unique 30-degree slant, which allowed for a longer, more uniform intake manifold and a lower hood line, but also its apt nickname, the Leaning Tower of Power. This was not just an engineering solution. It was a manifesto of a new approach, where compactness and efficiency were combined with one primary goal: unprecedented reliability. The perfect engineering balance we've mentioned now reveals its secrets. Its foundation is robust cast iron. While others experimented with lightweight aluminum blocks, sometimes running into overheating issues, the Slant Six engineers stood their ground. The cast iron block and cylinder head became the key to its phenomenal rigidity and resistance to warping. This was a material capable of withstanding colossal loads, day after day, year after year. The heart of this titan, the crankshaft, was supported by 5 main bearings in the 225 cubic inch version, providing unparalleled support and minimizing wear even under the harshest conditions. This decision, a gold standard of durability, guaranteed long and stable operation under any load. And the meticulously designed water jackets, enveloping each cylinder along its entire length, ensured uniform and efficient cooling eliminating localized hotspots and protecting the metal from fatigue. All of this was complemented by a philosophy of a moderate state of tune and relatively low RPMs. The Slant Six wasn't aiming for speed or horsepower records. Its purpose was different: to deliver stable, accessible torque in everyday use, to work without strain, without putting undue stress on its iron internals. This was a marathon runner, not a sprinter. And this philosophy bore fruit, giving rise to legends. Legends backed by real numbers. Stories of Slant Sixes running for more than 500,000 miles, 800,000 kilometers, without a major rebuild, and sometimes even past the million-mile mark with minimal maintenance, became the engine's calling card. These weren't isolated incidents, but rather proof of a systematic approach to creating an engine that simply refused to die. Mechanics around the world tell stories of how a Slant Six kept running with a hole in a piston, a cracked block, or almost no oil. It seemed to possess its own will to live. This is why the Slant Six became something more than just a collection of metal parts. It became a tangible symbol of a bygone era, when engineers built machines that were meant to last for decades. Unlike modern engines, designed with strict emissions regulations and sometimes a planned service life in mind, the Slant Six was born in an age where reliability and longevity were top priorities. Its departure from the American market in 1983 was not due to its shortcomings, but to the changing demands of the industry. The push for compactness, fuel economy, and compliance with new emission standards. It fell victim to its own virtue. It was too simple, too reliable, too durable for a world that increasingly valued the new. But for thousands of enthusiasts and owners of classic Mopars, the Slant Six remains a beacon, a reminder of a golden age of automotive engineering. It is the embodiment of engineering integrity, proof that with the right approach, one can create not just an engine, but an unkillable legend. And although its production lines have long since gone silent, the spirit of the Leaning Tower of Power lives on in the hearts of those who value true reliability, and in the thousands of vehicles that continue to run, proving year after year, perfect engineering is immortal. The story of the Slant Six is not just a saga about a cast-iron engine. It is a parable about humanity's eternal quest for perfection and the paradoxes of that journey. It became an unwitting witness to the clash of two worlds, one of uncompromising engineering integrity, creating mechanisms that last for decades, and another of market dynamics that demand constant renewal. In our pursuit of innovation and fleeting trends, have we lost the ability to value true, timeless reliability? And is it possible in the modern world to build something that is too good, too eternal, for its own economic good? What role does reliability play in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to our channel to explore new chapters in the history of engineering, and support us with a like if the story of this Leaning Tower of Power resonated with you.